Hello, this is Mary from Home Sweet Home Creations, and I'm here with our fourth lesson for our parenting class, and this is for toddler age up into 5-year-olds, and then there are other classes that I'll do for infants up to 1 year old, and then we will also do some for teenage age groups. So um, this one is all about what our needs are and what, whether we're children or adults or babies or teenagers, or the elderly, we all have certain needs that need to be met, and we do different things to get those needs met. Sometimes it's unintentional, it's subconscious stuff, things we've learned over years. But if we're children, we're just starting to learn all of the things about life and about our relationships with our parents, with our siblings, with whoever's in our lives. And so we're figuring out what our needs are, and we're figuring out how to get those needs met. So sometimes we will have somebody come into our lives that we don't know very well, and we won't feel comfortable getting our needs met from that person. But if you are somebody who likes to be hugged, usually you have that is filling some kind of need in nurturing us, and that would be a physical need. So physically, you like to be loved, and the one way that you might receive and know you're loved is with hugging, depending on what you learn. And so that's what we're going to talk about. What are those needs that everyone has, and how do we as parents figure out what those are for our children so we can meet those needs? And also to make sure that we meet our own needs also. So, one of the needs that all people need is the social needs. So we have a need for friendship and companionship, and we usually seek these out through our family or groups that we belong to. In growing up, it might be a play group, it might just be your own family, it might be when you're in preschool or you get older and you're in regular school age. And then you might join a club or a group in school or outside of school, and that's where we're going to meet those people that are going to become part of our social group. The other need that all people have is the physical need. We talked about hugs. Hugs can be physical, but they're also an emotional need because they feel that emotional need to be loved. The other types of physical needs are sleep. We all need to sleep, and we all need food, exercise, air, water, and as we get older, we have sexual needs. So all of these needs are part of our human nature. We all have that need, and how we get them met is how we are taught. So as parents, it's our responsibility to teach our children healthy ways to get these needs met, and sometimes that's through our own example of how we're getting our needs met. So it's a big responsibility. to be a parent, to have your children watching you, to see what you do as an example. So the other need that all people need, no matter who or age, what age you are, is intellectual needs. So the need for stimulation, intellectual stimulation, and for thinking new thoughts, reading and challenging books, and learning something new. Like, let's say you start out, when your children are little, they might start out reading something like this book right here, Barney's Hugs. And as they get a little bit older, they kind of grow out of this one and they move up to a different level of book. And it's maybe they can sit longer and listen longer, and they're learning words, and maybe they're even starting to learn to read a word or two. So as that happens, they change into the type of book that they're wanting to have, because it's going to meet that intellectual need. Now, children that are very small will read the same book over and over and over and over, and you will be reading it over and over and over and over. But that is how they learn to read, and that is how they start to understand that words are written, and the words that we speak can be written down in a book and written other places. So as we read to them, they start looking at the pages. If you make sure that they're watching with you and following along, they might pick up a word or a letter. When they're learning letters, they might identify, oh, that's an A, or that looks like the same letter that my name starts with. So all of that is the beginning of them identifying with words and books, and you as a parent are the natural teacher. Even though they go to school, you start from the very beginning helping and teaching them these things by what you do with them. So and if you are an adult, you want to model that same thing. If you're somebody who loves to read, then they're going to see you reading all the time, and they're going to think that, oh, that daddy does like to read a lot of books, so I'm going to keep reading because he is really smart. I want to be as smart as him. Or they might see somebody, one of their parents decides they want to take a class and learn something different than what they're doing at that time, and they go back to school, and then they see them studying, and that's stimulating their intellect, and the children see that and say, oh, studying and going to school, even when daddy's age, is a good thing, because it makes you smarter and you know more. So everyone has an intellectual need also. So we're all different, and we all have different intellectual needs, and we're just depends on who we are and what interests us, what passions we have, and sometimes it's learned. So that is one of the other needs that we all have. So as parents, we're going to make sure that our children are stimulated and make sure that they can have an opportunity to have books in their hands to read, to see, to have people reading to them. You can be reading to them at night before bed or before nap or anytime. And maybe grandma and grandpa come over and read to them, and maybe they go to the library to a story hour, and they find out that a lot of kids are also getting to be read to, and they get to participate in the story together. That's the social part. So the other need is a creative need. So we all have some creative need, but it may be a different thing from one person to the next. Like my husband's creative, he has many creative um, things he likes to do, but his main creativeness is automotive. He builds cars, and he fixes cars, and he restores cars, and but he's also very good at computers, and he's good at a lot of different things. But as far as his creativeness, he used to like to do some art when he was younger, and when he was very little, he was the Lego guy. So um, you could see that when your kids are little and they're playing with certain toys, and you know that they're very good at it, that eventually that might turn into something else because they're good at building things, seeing that vision of something becoming, turning into something, these shapes. I'm not good at that, but my son loved that also. Um, and so that creative need needs to be met also for all of us. So if they see you doing things that are creative, they're going to want to do creative things too. So as parents, it's up to us to make that available to them. If you have a child that loves to color, and they love animals, then if you have a coloring book with animals in it, they're going to um, get better and better at that, and eventually they might grow up and start being able to draw horses, paint horses, and maybe they'll change into some other form of art. But that creativity is set there, that they already have a desire to do that. Um, some people get into other types of creativity, and doing dance could be a creative thing that someone does. Even though it's physical, it's also creative. So it can be more than one of these needs being met. Um, and some people like to write, if they're old enough to write, and some people like to write poems. I like to write poems. I like lots of different crafts and art, and cooking. I like to make food that looks good and is creative, and so there's many ways to fill that need in adults, and we have to nurture that in our children so that they can feel fulfilled. That need will be met because we've encouraged it, and they've seen it as an example in what we do, and we give them the opportunity by making sure they have what they need um, to be able to do their creative things they like. Like, let's say they get into school and they like drama. Well, sometimes you have to come up with the drama fee so they can be in the drama class and do the acting. Or let's say they really want to learn how to do gymnastics, but it's up to the parent to make sure that can happen. But not everyone is going to have those opportunities, because unfortunately a lot of things do cost money, and we all have to look at where we are in our family and the budgets. But there's a lot of things given also that you could do, like YWCA is something that's usually not very expensive to go there if they have those classes and they have things like that. Some places they're smaller, so there's only specific things there, but there's usually something in your community that you can take your kids to that won't be too expensive. And then also, if you as a parent want to do something, to volunteer your time to help not only your own child but other children have a need met. So let's say it's the physical need and they need a soccer coach. I did that when my kids were little, and I knew nothing about soccer. But they were little, and I read the rules, and I played lots of different sports growing up, and so I was able to do that for my kids, for a few years, I helped with the very little ones in soccer. So yeah, you can create those creative and social and physical opportunities for your kids by volunteering. So, like I said, some will fulfill a lot of those needs. So, and emotional, because my mom's there. My mom's there being the coach. They love that, And so anytime that, you can give yourself to help their social, physical, creative, emotional, um, and then the last one is the spiritual need, that we all have spiritual needs. We are born and we learn something about spirituality. We may learn that it's not good, or we may learn that it is good, depending on who our parents are, what they believe, what they expose us to, and what they, how, in their examples. So we have to decide what is it we really value and believe, and what do we want to teach our children about that, and how do we want them to see the world and see their existence in the world, and how are we going to teach that to them. So all of that comes into play as soon as you have a child. You probably don't think about it a lot. Maybe you say, well, I'm never going to do that with my kid, or this with my kid. But to say, this is what I believe, and this is what I truly know in my heart that I want to teach my child, and how am I going to do that? Okay, so as parents, we have the right to teach our child whatever it is we believe. But at the same time, is what you believe going to help that child to fill that need? Some children are just naturally spiritual, like they're just born that way, and you're like, wow, how did they know that? And so sometimes what we believe and what we want to teach our kids, they might later down the road decide to do something different, even if we are strongly teaching them a faith, or taking them to a church and teaching them something that we believe is important, and that it is the way to that it is your way, and you want it to be their way for this spiritual need to be fulfilled. But as they get older, they might accept that as a child, and then as they get older, they may change their ideas. So it really depends on the family. But for me, it's changed a lot over time. When my kids were little, things change for us spiritually sometimes, and so then we redirect the children to a different thing. So sometimes you can't really pinpoint what kind of things you want to teach your kids about that, but mostly we would at least have some good morals, values, and some love and kindness for others. So that falls into what we're going to talk about next, which is empathy. Having empathy for your children, having empathy for others in your community, and having empathy for other people's needs. And before we talk about that, I was going to read this little book to you, because it is actually about hugs. And I read this to my kids when they were little. Barney was big then, and I think he's still around, but I don't know for sure how many kids even know who Barney is. but he's this big purple dinosaur. And dinosaurs have always been popular. I don't think they ever lose their fascination for kids. But in this story, it's all about Barney's Books of Hugs. And it's written by Cheryl Leach and Patrick Leach and illustrated by June Valentine Rupe. Okay. And this was given to my son who's now 25, by a very good friend of ours and her family. And the first part of it goes like this. Hugs are really simple. Hugs are really fun. There are many kinds of hugs. What's your favorite one? Oh, you want to show them the pictures. And then when I'm reading to kids, I always follow along what I'm reading with my finger. And that helps them to learn the words also. Because they really do start to follow your finger. And then the more they do that and hear the words as you're reading it, the more they'll start to memorize this book. And when they memorize a book and they can read it, then it gives them encouragement and excitement to read another book. And so it really is a fun thing to watch as kids learning and growing and things like that. So the next page is Barney. My favorite hug is a birthday hug. A birthday hug makes me feel so special. Oh, there's his birthday. Having a party. My favorite hug is a grandparent hug. I love it when they come to visit. There's Grandma and Grandpa visiting. My favorite hug is a "That's okay" hug. Thank you. That makes me feel better. My favorite hug is a puppy hug. Oh, that feels all wet and icky and tickly. There's the puppy hug. My favorite hug is a feel better hug. Now it doesn't hurt so much. Yeah. Sometimes they just want that hug. My favorite hug is a good job hug. Yay, I'm feeling proud. And they're celebrating his achievement. My favorite hug is a don't be afraid hug. That makes me feel safe. There's some thunder and lightning out there. We had some of that yesterday here. It was a big boomer. My favorite hug is a good night hug. Oh, now I feel all warm and snuggly. Snuggling up to Daddy. My favorite hug is an I love you hug. Oh, that's the best feeling of all. To Barney, I love you. And Barney's song was all about I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. And that's all I'm going to sing because I can't remember the rest. But it was very catchy. And you heard it a lot way back when my kids were little. So, because this book is about hugs and all the different kinds of hugs that you could have, we're going to talk about empathy and love and caring. And this could also be used later when the child is a little bit older, that usually they have to be a little bit bigger than one, probably by the time they're 2 and 3. They're talking about stranger danger and that type of thing. And um, since this is about hugs, you could at that point start introducing some things about, when it's okay to hug and when it isn't, or those kinds of things, because really that is the parents' job too. It's a hard job, but you need to have that conversation with them so they understand in their own little way what is okay, what isn't okay, so they can um, be safe and you can help them be safe. So in this world today, there's a lot of stuff going on, and for kids in that way, and in safety is really important. And I have been known to be I think they call them hover moms now, but I was pretty protective of my kids, and I was going to make sure that they were safe. And, however I did it, it worked. They were pretty safe. And so I feel like that was, that's what worked for us as a family. And I had the opportunity to be there with them more than some people can. But making sure that they're safe is pretty important, and that the people they're with are safe. And I think that's why we as parents are responsible to make sure our daycares have good, safe people working there, that they're doing well in their schools, in their activities. All of those places can be safe places, and it's up to us as parents to make sure that is a safe place for them if we're going to be having them there with the other people. And so that was just an idea for this book, because books that really do help kids identify with certain things and then lead into conversations that you need to have as a parent. Okay, so empathy, I'm going to read you this definition I have so you can be accurate about that. Empathy is ability to be aware of the needs of another human being and to respond to those needs in a manner that empowers and builds positive self-esteem and self-concept. Walking a mile in another person's shoes as a parent of a young child. Empathy is walking a mile in a child's booties and becoming aware of the struggles and joys of babyhood. So babies have needs, and we as the parents are the ones that are going to fulfill those needs, unless they're in a daycare situation or with their grandparent. And so we need to be empathetic about where that child is. So as a baby, they're trying to tell us stuff all the time, and we kind of have to figure it out by, if they're hungry, if they need their diaper changed, if they're just frustrated and tired. So as you are with your child, you're going to be able to figure it out if you have empathy. Okay. If your child is getting out of bed at 2 a.m. to find out why your child's crying and to work towards meeting the child's needs. So instead of getting angry because they're out of their bed, maybe we need to ask some questions first and find out, what is the need that this child has? Is it that they wet their bed? Is it that they are scared? Is it that they have to go to the bathroom? Or they're thirsty? or they had a bad dream. Finding out what the reason is for them waking up. If they're not verbal yet, then you have to try and figure out what's going on by trying different things with them. So if you have empathy for your child when you get woke up in the middle of the night, you're going to find that patience to find out what the need is that they need. So empathy is super important in these situations. Sometimes your mother might have more empathy and she might be a better waker-upper. Sometimes your dad might. So in those situations, sometimes you might have a certain parent that is better at waking up in the middle of the night. Okay? You might have a parent who likes to get up early and is a better morning person to be helping the kids up. So families all work these things out, but with empathy you can figure out exactly what the needs are and how your family is going to meet those needs for that child. Okay? And recognizing, understanding the feelings of the child. So you have to recognize what's going on and understand it, and then realize that the child's only there because they have a need. It's not about torturing mom and dad in the middle of the night. They don't think like that. They wake up and they need something from you. And it may just be a hug and a tucking of back into bed and maybe another story. But sometimes it's just a reassurance that you're there and that you care. So the highest form of parenting, when empathy is in place, there's simply no room for violence. So that's why empathy is so important. The behaviors are diametrically opposed to one another. So if you have empathy, you can't have violence. You can, but you're going to feel terrible about it because you care about that child and you have empathy for them. So empathy is very important as a parent, that you care about your child and you want to know what's going on with them, what kind of needs are they having, what do you need to do as a parent. And so that is one thing that we just need to have in our heart, that these are our children and we're their parent and we will love them, take care of them, and grow them into the best possible adults that we can. And sometimes we have to relearn some of that if we didn't get it. So that's why we're doing these classes. So the highest the second thing we're going to talk about is the needs. Okay, we talked about that people have needs and what all those were. The force that drives people to behave the way that they do. Okay. Adults and children behave the way they do for a reason or a purpose. That is to get a payoff. Okay. So the payoff is getting the need met. A payoff is something we get when we get our needs met. Right? So if Joey has a need to eat because he's hungry, and the parent understands that that's what's going on with Joey, then he gets fed, and then his payoff is that he's not hungry anymore. So some payoffs are negative and some are positive. So maybe the payoff was Joey got up in the middle of the night and was hungry, and the parents knew he was hungry because he chose not to eat his dinner. even though they told him, Joey, if you don't eat your dinner, you're going to be hungry later, and this is when we eat dinner. So if you don't eat dinner now, you're not going to get dinner later in the middle of the night. So sometimes it depends on, the child and what their need is and what happened beforehand. But so the payoff for that might be that next time Joey is having dinner, he's going to eat dinner then, so he's not hungry later. So, but food is a difficult thing because that is really a need all people have, and you really can't use that as a discipline, but as a choice and consequence. And so they have to be old enough to understand that. If they're not old enough, if that's an unrealistic consequence for that age, then we can't expect that from that child. They have to be old enough to understand and to make choices. So by the time they're 3.5, they could start to make those choices. Any younger than that, they're probably not capable of understanding that completely. So some payoffs are negative and some are positive. And how we feel about ourselves influences the way we get our needs met and the payoffs we receive. So the way we get our needs met and the payoff we receive. So how we feel about ourselves can influence that. So if I have a need that I need to ask my mom for $10 to go get my hair cut, but I don't feel good enough about myself that I think she would give it to me, so I don't get my need met. I don't ask, which is kind of a bad example. But basically, if I feel like I'm worthy and I have good self-esteem, then I will ask other people for my needs to be met. So if I needed a hug because I fell down and hurt myself, and it really isn't about the pain of the knee that you hurt, but it's about being comforted by the parent, then that need might be just a hug and encouragement to that you understand, empathy, that you understand that they're hurt, and then encouraging them to go back to play. So those things, that when kids can communicate their need to you like that, you want to make sure that you follow through and get and fulfill that need. Otherwise, they will have feelings of rejection and low self-esteem and unworthiness. So we really need to put in that extra effort to make our kids feel loved and cared for. And their behavior has one purpose: to meet a need. So always remember that behaviors are of children especially are to have their needs being met. So they're not out to get you. They're not just trying to drive you crazy or make you wake up in the middle of the night or make you smell a poopy diaper. They really cannot change that diaper themselves. And they really need you. They really need you to do it. And they really need you to love them and feed them and clothe them and encourage them and raise them and be their mommy and daddy. They really need you. You're the parent. So just always remember that the kids really just need you to be there for them and teach them. There are other situations where you have a parent that might allow the child to do anything and everything and not have any limits. And that's another thing we're going to talk about, because there can be two sides to every story, and there's a balance in it. So that particular thing would be, we would be talking about spoiling your child. So we are going to leave that till next time, and I am going to ask you to think about what was shared today, and how you could improve, if you're a parent now, how you could improve your parenting with your child by having more empathy. And I'm going to have you write down that definition of empathy, so you will know what we're talking about. That it's the ability to be aware of the needs of another human being and to respond to those needs in a manner that empowers and builds positive self-esteem and self-concept. Okay, so with that definition, I want you to think about your children and your interaction with them, and in what situation can you have more empathy, and how you can change what you do now to make it better, to build their self-esteem and their self-concept. Okay. And the other thing is, when we talked about the needs of all people, I want you to write this down also. The needs that people have are social, physical, intellectual, creative, emotional, and spiritual. So for each one of those 6, write down one need you have in that category, and then one need that your child might have in that category. So if you have more than one child, you would write one for each child. If you have 8 children or 10 children or a lot of children, you could just pick 2 or 3 of those children, unless you want to do them all. Then you would be very aware of what all their needs would be in those categories. Okay? So I'm going to leave it there, and then when we get together, we will discuss those. All right? I thank you for being here, and I hope that you will, that you're getting something positive out of this, and that you're going to be able to be a more empathetic, more loving, more caring, and more aware parent as we go along. All right? Bye. You guys have a great weekend, night, evening, or morning, whenever you're watching this. Bye-bye.